I stood in that hospital room, watching my father's face drain of color, as the recording of his own voice echoed through the sterile air. If one of them can't make it, save Lydia. She has a brighter future. We can't afford both. The machine beeped steadily behind me, marking my sister's fragile heartbeat. As my mother gripped the bed rail so hard, her knuckles turned white. This was the moment I had been building toward for 2 years. The moment when they would finally understand that the daughter they had left to die in the flames had risen from those ashes stronger than they could ever imagine. But before I tell you how I got here, before I show you how I made them pay for what they did, I need you to understand something. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's about survival. It's about realizing your worth when the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally decided you were disposable. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the one left behind while someone else got all the love and attention, then this story is for you. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories like this. And drop a comment telling me if you think I went too far or not far enough. Because what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you thought you knew about family loyalty. Now let me take you back to where it all began. To the night that changed everything. I was 14 when I woke up, choking on smoke. The alarm was screaming, and I could hear Lydia's terrified cries cutting through the roar of flames. My little sister was 12, and her room was down the hall from mine. I didn't think. I just ran. The heat hit me like a physical wall as I burst into the hallway. Orange flames were climbing the walls, eating through the wallpaper. Our mother had chosen just last spring. The pretty flowers were curling and blackening, turning to ash before my eyes. Lydia's door was closed. I grabbed the handle, and my palm sizzled against the hot metal. But I pushed through the pain and yanked it open. She was pressed against her window, trying to open it, coughing so hard she could barely stand. I grabbed her arm and pulled her toward me. We had to get to the stairs. We had to get out. The smoke was so thick I could barely see 3 feet in front of me. My eyes were streaming, my lungs burning with each breath. I wrapped my arm around Lydia's shoulders and guided her toward where I knew the staircase should be. Behind us, I heard a horrible cracking sound. I pushed Lydia forward and looked back just in time to see a ceiling beam give way. It came down like a judgment from heaven, and I threw myself over my sister, shielding her body with mine. The pain was instant and overwhelming. The beam caught my leg, pinning me down. I felt something crack, felt the searing heat burning through my pajama pants into my skin. I screamed, but the sound was lost in the roar of the fire. Lydia was crying, trying to pull me up, but I couldn't move. The weight was too much. The smoke was too thick. I remember thinking this was how I was going to die. At 14 years old, on the floor of my burning house, with my little sister screaming my name. Then there was nothing but darkness. When I woke up 3 days later, the first thing I noticed was the smell, antiseptic and bleach. The unmistakable scent of a hospital. The second thing was the pain. My entire body felt like it was still on fire. I was wrapped in bandages, tubes running from my arms, machines beeping all around me. I tried to move and a nurse appeared immediately, gently pushing me back down. "Don't try to sit up, sweetheart," she said, her voice kind but firm. "You've been through a lot." I wanted to ask about Lydia, but my throat was too raw. The nurse seemed to understand. "Your sister is okay. She's in the next room. You saved her life." I should have felt relief. I should have felt proud. But there was something in the way she said it, something in the way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes, that made my stomach twist with dread. That night, when the nurses thought I was asleep, I heard them, my parents. They were talking to someone in the hallway, and their voices carried through the partially open door. The doctor's voice was calm, professional, explaining something about our conditions, our prognoses. Then I heard my father's voice, and the coldness in it made my blood freeze. "Doctor, we've lost everything. The house, our savings, everything we had is gone. If one of them can't make it through this, you save Lydia. Do you understand me? The younger one has a brighter future. We can't afford to take care of both of them. Not with the medical bills and everything else." There was a pause. I could imagine the doctor's face. The shock. The professional mask trying to stay in place. "Sir, Both girls are in stable condition. There's no reason to think either of them won't recover. Stable, my father's voice rose, sharp with barely contained anger. You don't understand what I'm saying. If one of them takes a turn for the worse, if one of them becomes a burden, you know which one to prioritize. We're not going to throw good money after bad. My mother's voice was quieter, but I heard every word. Richard's right. Doctor. Ellie's older. She'll understand. Lydia still has her whole life ahead of her. She has dreams. Potential. We have to think about the future. I lay there in that hospital bed, staring at the white ceiling tiles, trying to process what I had just heard. My parents, the people who were supposed to love me no matter what, had just told a doctor to let me die, if it came down to a choice. Not because I was sicker, not because I had less chance of survival, but because I was less valuable to them, because Lydia, their golden child, their perfect daughter, it was worth saving. And I was not. The tears came then, hot and silent, soaking into the pillow beneath my head. I had thrown myself over Lydia to protect her from that falling beam. I had taken the injury that should have been hers. And this was how they repaid me. This was how much I mattered to them. The next 2 weeks in the hospital were torture. And not just because of the physical pain. My parents came to visit, but it was perfunctory, obligatory. They spent most of their time with Lydia, holding her hand, bringing her flowers and stuffed animals, telling her how brave she was. When they came to my room, they barely looked at me. My mother would ask how I was feeling in a flat, disinterested voice. My father would glance at my chart, make a comment about the mounting bills, and then they would leave. One afternoon, I heard him in the hallway, talking on his phone to the insurance company. The older one's bills are twice what we expected. Yes, I understand there were complications. I'm just saying, this is a lot of money for someone who's going to have permanent damage anyway. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. But I just lay there, silent, letting the hatred build inside me like a slow-burning fire. When they finally discharged us, there was no home to go back to. The house was a burned-out shell, condemned, and waiting to be demolished. My father had rented a cheap motel room on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where the neon sign flickered and the carpet smelled like decades of cigarette smoke and failure. There was one queen bed and a pull-out couch that barely qualified as furniture. Lydia got the bed. My parents took the pull-out couch. I got a sleeping bag on the floor between the bathroom and the door, where every time someone came in or out, they had to step over me. It was a perfect metaphor for my place in this family. The morning after our first night in the motel, I woke up to my father's voice. He was on the phone again, his tone sharp and businesslike. Yes, we have a meeting at 2. The scholarship committee wants to meet Lydia. This is her chance. He paused, then glanced over at me. I pretended to still be asleep. No, just the 3 of us. The other one doesn't need to come. There's no point wasting gas money taking someone who isn't going to college anyway. My mother murmured her agreement from the bathroom. Ellie can just rest today. She's not really college material. Not college material. I was 15 years old and had a 8 gigapascals before the fire, and they had already written off my entire future because Lydia was the star. Lydia was the one with potential. Lydia was the one worth investing in. That day, while they took my sister to her scholarship meeting, I made a decision. I was done waiting for them to love me. I was done hoping that someday they would see my worth. I was going to survive, and I was going to do it without them. The next morning, I left the motel before they woke up. I walked 3 miles to the downtown area, my legs still aching from the injury, the scar tissue tight and pulling with each step. I had $27 in my pocket, the money I had saved from birthdays and odd jobs before the fire. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I walked into every business on Main Street, asking if they were hiring. Most places took one look at me, a scrawny 15-year-old with a limp and burn scars still visible on my arms, and turned me away. But Frank Miller, owner of Frank's Diner, looked at me differently. He was a big man with kind eyes and hands scarred from years of working a grill. "You old enough to work, kid?" he asked, wiping down the counter. "I will be," I said, which was technically true since I would turn 16 in 4 months. And I'm a hard worker. I show up on time. I do what needs to be done. He studied me for a long moment, and I held his gaze, refusing to look away. Finally, he nodded. You start tomorrow, 6 a.m. Don't be late. I wasn't. I was there at 5:45, standing outside the locked door, waiting. When Frank arrived, he just smiled and let me in without a word. That first day, he taught me how to work the register, how to take orders, how to move through the cramped kitchen without getting in the cook's way. My leg hurt so badly by the end of the shift that I could barely walk. But I didn't complain. I needed this job. I needed something that was mine. Something my parents couldn't take away or diminish. Frank never asked me about my home life. But I think he knew. The way I flinched when someone raised their voice. The way I ate every scrap of food he gave me, like I didn't know when my next meal would be. The way I always asked to work extra shifts, even when I was obviously exhausted. One night, about a month after I started, he sat down across from me after we closed. You've got a fire in you, Ellie, he said quietly. A quiet one, but it burns steady. Don't let anybody put that out. Those words meant more to me than any praise my parents had ever given me. Frank saw something in me that they never had. He saw my worth. Over the next 2 years, I worked every shift Frank would give me. I saved every penny I could, hiding the cash in a shoebox under my sleeping bag. I enrolled myself in an online high school program, studying late into the night after my shifts, determined to get my diploma, even though my parents had made it clear they thought I was wasting my time. Lydia, meanwhile, flourished. She got that scholarship, a full ride to a prestigious prep school. My parents bragged about her to anyone who would listen. Our daughter, the scholar. We raised her right. They posted pictures on social media. Lydia in her school uniform. Lydia at academic competitions. Lydia receiving awards. In every single photo, it was just the three of them. I had been cropped out of the family portrait, literally and figuratively. Sometimes Lydia would try to talk to me. Why don't you come to my award ceremony, she would ask. Her voice tentative. I want you there. But I knew the truth. Our parents hadn't invited me. They didn't want me there. The damaged daughter. The one who limped. The one who reminded everyone that their perfect family wasn't so perfect after all. I would make excuses. Say I had to work. And watch the disappointment flicker across Lydia's face. She didn't understand. She didn't know what they had said in that hospital. What they had chosen. And I couldn't tell her. What good would it do to poison her against our parents? She was 12 when it happened. She had been unconscious, unaware of the devil's bargain they had been willing to make. On my 18th birthday, I did something my parents never expected. I went to an insurance office and took out a life insurance policy on myself. It wasn't expensive, just a basic term policy, but it was mine. And I named Lydia as the sole beneficiary, not my parents. Lydia, because even though I resented the favoritism, even though it hurt every day to watch them pour all their love and resources into her while giving me nothing, she was still my sister. And I had saved her life once. If something happened to me, I wanted to make sure she would be taken care of. That she wouldn't be trapped by our parents' expectations and financial manipulation the way I had been. Frank was the witness on the policy. He asked me why I was doing it. And I told him the truth. Because I want to make sure that if something happens to me, the right person benefits. Not the people who would be glad I was gone. He didn't argue. He just signed his name and pulled me into a hug. You're a good kid, Ellie. Better than they deserve. Life continued in its grinding routine. Wake up. Work. Study. Sleep on the floor. Repeat. I was saving money. Slowly building toward a future where I could move out. Get my own place. I never have to depend on my parents for anything ever again. I was so close. Just a few more months and I would have enough for a deposit on an apartment. Then, 2 weeks before my 19th birthday, my phone rang at 4 in the morning. It was my mother, and her voice was shaking. Ellie, you need to come to the hospital. It's Lydia. My heart dropped into my stomach. What happened? Car accident. She's in surgery. It's bad. Ellie, it's really bad. I got to the hospital in record time. My hands shaking on the steering wheel of the beat-up Honda Civic I had bought with my savings 6 months ago. My parents were in the waiting room, my mother crying, my father pacing like a caged animal. They barely acknowledged me when I arrived. Hours passed. Finally, a doctor came out, her face grave. She's stable, but she's going to need a kidney transplant. The damage from the accident was severe. We need to test family members to see if anyone is a match. We all got tested. And of course, I was the perfect match. The only match. Lydia's life depended on me giving her one of my kidneys. My parents came to the diner 3 days later. I was wiping down tables, getting ready for the lunch rush. When I saw them walk in, they looked older than I remembered, worn down by stress and fear. My father's hair had gone almost completely gray. My mother's face was haggard. "Ellie," my father said, and there was something in his voice I had never heard before. Desperation. "We need to talk to you." I set down my rag and crossed my arms. "Talk." "It's about Lydia," my mother said, reaching out like she wanted to touch me, then thinking better of it. "You know she needs a kidney. You're her only hope." "I know," I said flatly. "So you'll do it." My father's voice was eager, presumptuous. "You'll donate." I looked at them both. These people who had created me, raised me, and then decided I was expendable. Why should I? My mother's face crumpled. "Because she's your sister, because you love her." "I do love her," I said. And it was true. Despite everything, I loved Lydia. But what I want to know is, why do you care? What kind of question is that my father demanded? "She's our daughter." "So am I," I said quietly. "But that didn't stop you from telling the doctors to let me die." The color drained from both their faces. My mother opened her mouth, but no sound came out. My father took a step back, like I had physically struck him. "You heard that," my mother whispered. "Every word." I said, "I heard you tell the doctor that if one of us couldn't make it, he should let it be me. That Lydia was worth saving and I wasn't, that you couldn't afford both of us. So you'd rather I die." "Ellie, that's not." We were stressed. We didn't mean my father started, but I cut him off. "Don't." My voice was sharp as broken glass. "Don't you dare try to rewrite history. You meant every word, and you've spent the last 5 years proving it. So now you come here, after years of treating me like I'm disposable, like I'm nothing, and you ask me to literally give up a piece of my body for the daughter you actually love. Please," my mother begged, and there were real tears on her face now. "We need you." "You need a kidney," I corrected. "You don't need me. You've made that very clear." I turned back to my work, dismissing them. They stood there for a moment longer. Then my father grabbed my mother's arm and pulled her toward the door. As they left, I heard him mutter, "She's just being selfish. She'll come around." But I didn't come around. Days passed. They called. They texted. They even showed up at Frank's place. Demanding, he convinced me. Frank told them politely but firmly that what I chose to do with my body was none of his business, and certainly none of theirs. Then, 2 weeks after their first visit, the hospital called with news. They had found a kidney donor, a distant cousin I didn't even know existed. Lydia would be okay. She didn't need me after all. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt an opportunity crystallizing before me, because now my parents would come back, probably to gloat. Definitely to pretend like they hadn't spent 2 weeks trying to guilt and manipulate me into compliance. And this time, I would be ready. 3 days after Lydia's successful transplant, I walked into her hospital room. She was awake, pale, but smiling. So relieved to have survived. Our parents were there, of course, hovering like anxious birds. Lydia's face lit up when she saw me. "I'm so glad you came." I moved to her bedside and took her hand. It was thin and cold, and I squeezed it gently. "I wouldn't miss this. Sis, I'm so glad you're okay. Thank God for Cousin Martha," my mother said, her voice trembling with relief. "We were so worried." "I'm sure you were," I said, not looking at her. I kept my eyes on Lydia. "How are you feeling?" Tired. Sore. But alive, she said, and laughed weakly. The doctors say I'll make a full recovery. That's wonderful. I said, and meant it. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out a small recording device. It was old-fashioned, the kind with actual buttons, and I set it on the bedside table. What's that? My father asked sharply. Something I think we all need to hear. I said, see. Frank's had this old security system in his diner for years. Cameras everywhere, even in the little storage room where he keeps his office. And 5 years ago, when Lydia and I were in the hospital after the fire, Frank offered to let you use his office to make some phone calls. Remember, you said the hospital was too crowded, too loud. My mother's face had gone white. Ellie, what are you? He never mentioned that the security system records audio too. I continued. Pressing play. My father's voice filled the room. Tinny, but unmistakable. Doctor, we've lost everything. The house. Our savings. Everything we had is gone. If one of them can't make it through this, you save Lydia. Do you understand me? The younger one has a brighter future. We can't afford to take care of both of them. Lydia's hand went limp in mine. She was staring at our parents, her eyes wide with horror and disbelief. My mother's voice came next from the speaker. Ellie's older. She'll understand. Lydia still has her whole life ahead of her. She has dreams, potential. We have to think about the future. There was more. Several minutes of my parents discussing me like I was a bad investment, like I was a burden to be shed if the opportunity arose, the doctor's increasingly uncomfortable responses, my father's cold insistence that they would not waste resources on a child with limited prospects. When it finally ended, the silence in the room was deafening. Lydia was crying, tears streaming down her face. My mother had collapsed into a chair, her hand over her mouth. My father was frozen, his face a mask of shock and anger. You recorded us, he finally said, his voice shaking. That's illegal. Actually, it's not, I said calmly. This state is a one-party consent state for recordings, and Frank consented, since it was his property. Plus, you were discussing potential medical malpractice, which creates an exception anyway. I checked with a lawyer. Daniel Hayes had been very helpful when I had gone to him 3 months ago with the recording. He had listened to the whole thing, his expression growing darker by the minute, and then told me exactly what my legal options were. Why? Lydia whispered, looking at our parents. Why would you say those things? We were disparity, my mother said, reaching for her. We weren't thinking clearly. We were traumatized. We didn't mean any of it. You meant every word, I said, and you've spent the last 5 years proving it. The separate sleeping arrangements, the way you invest everything in Lydia's education and nothing in mine, the way you talk about me like I'm already gone, like I don't matter. You've been treating me like I'm disposable since the night of the fire. You're being dramatic, my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. We've provided for you. You've had food, shelter, a sleeping bag on the floor. I interrupted. While Lydia got a bed. You gave her a future and told me I wasn't college material. You bragged about her achievements and acted like I didn't exist. You cropped me out of family photos. You made a choice that night, and you've been living that choice every day since. Lydia was sobbing now, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. I hated that I was doing this to her. Hated that she had to learn this truth in such a brutal way. But she needed to know. She needed to understand what our parents really were. I'm sorry, I said softly, just to her. You deserve to know the truth. You're a monster. My mother spat at me, finding her voice. We come to you begging for help, and you throw this in our faces, you selfish. Ungrateful. Careful, I said, my voice cold. You really want to talk about selfishness. You ask me to give up a kidney for the daughter you love while treating the daughter you don't like she's worthless. That's not family. That's organ harvesting with extra steps. How dare you? My father growled, taking a step toward me. After everything we've done for you, you left me to die. I said simply, you literally told a doctor that if he had to choose, he should let me die. There is no coming back from that. There is no explaining that away. You made your choice, and now you have to live with it. I turned back to Lydia. She was still crying, but she reached out and grabbed my hand again, holding it tight. Did you know? She asked, her voice breaking. When I was in the accident, when they said I needed a kidney. Did you know you were a match? Yes, I said honestly. Were you going to let me die? The question was barely a whisper. No, I said firmly. Never. You're my sister, and I love you. But I needed them to understand what it feels like to beg for something from someone who has every reason to say no. I needed them to feel helpless and desperate. I needed them to know what they did to me. We get it, my father said bitterly. You've made your point. Can we move past this now? Move past it. I stared at him in disbelief. You think this is something we just move past? You think I'm going to forgive you, and we'll all go back to being a happy family? What do you want? Ellie, my mother asked, and she actually sounded curious. Like she genuinely had no idea what I could possibly want from them at this point. I want you to understand that I don't need you. I said, I haven't needed you for years. I have a job, my own place, a future I'm building without your help or approval. I want you to know that when I took out that life insurance policy last year, I made Lydia the sole beneficiary, not you, because I wanted to make sure that if something happened to me, someone who actually loved me would benefit. Not the people who wished I had died 5 years ago. My mother gasped. My father's face turned purple. You did what he demanded. I made sure my sister would be taken care of. I said, the way you never took care of me. That's what family does. We protect each other. We sacrifice for each other. I saved Lydia's life the night of the fire, and I would do it again. But I will never forgive you for wishing I hadn't survived it. I stood up, shouldering my bag. Lydia, I'll come visit you tomorrow. Just you. Mom, Dad, I think it's best if we don't see each other anymore. You can't just cut us out, my father said, his voice rising. We're your parents. No, I said quietly. You're the people who gave birth to me. But you stopped being my parents the night you decided I was expendable. Frank Miller has been more of a father to me than you ever were. I walked toward the door. But Lydia's voice stopped me. Ellie. Wait. I turned back. She was sitting up now. Despite the obvious pain it caused her, her eyes were red from crying, but there was something fierce in them. Something I had never seen before. I'm so sorry, she said. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said gently. And that's not your fault. You were 12. You were unconscious. You couldn't have known. But I should have seen it, she insisted. I should have noticed how they treated you. I should have said something. Done something. Hey, I interrupted, moving back to her bedside. You were a kid. They made you their favorite, but that wasn't your choice. You don't owe me an apology for being loved. But you weren't, she said, and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. You weren't loved. Not the way you should have been. I squeezed her hand. I know, but I'm okay now. I've built a life I'm proud of. And you're going to be okay too. I want you in my life, she said urgently. I don't care what they say. You're my sister. You saved my life. I want you in my life. I smiled. Genuinely smiled. For the first time in that hospital room, I'd like that. Behind me, I heard my mother start to say something, but I held up a hand to stop her. I'm done here. Lydia, I'll see you tomorrow. And I walked out of that room with my head held high, leaving my parents to face the consequences of their choices. The next few months were complicated. My parents tried repeatedly to reach out, to explain, to beg for forgiveness. I blocked their numbers. They showed up at Frank's diner, and he told them firmly that they weren't welcome. They tried to use Lydia as a go-between, but she refused. My sister had her own reckoning with our parents. She moved out of their house as soon as she was recovered enough. I got her own apartment near her college campus. We had dinner together every week, rebuilding the relationship that should have been there all along. She told me about the pressure they had put on her, the expectations, the way they had used her achievements to make themselves feel better about their failures. She had been their golden child, but it had been a prison made of high expectations and conditional love. I don't think they know how to love people, she told me one night over pizza. I don't think they ever learned. They love the idea of us. The status we give them, but not actually us. Not as people. Probably not. I agreed. Some people just aren't capable of it. How did you survive it, she asked. How did you come through all of that and not become bitter and angry? I thought about that for a moment. I am angry, I admitted. I'm furious. Actually, but I learned that the best revenge isn't destroying them. It's building a life so good that they can't touch it. It's being happy despite them. Not because of them. 6 months after the hospital confrontation, I got a letter from my father's lawyer. They were suing me for defamation and emotional distress, claiming that I had slandered them with my false accusations. Daniel Hayes took one look at the letter and laughed. They're idiots, he said cheerfully. Everything you said was true and provable. You have the recording. You have Frank's testimony about how they treated you. You have hospital records showing the disparity in their visits and involvement in your care. This lawsuit is going nowhere, except maybe getting them sanctioned for filing a frivolous claim. He was right. The judge threw it out in preliminary hearings, and my parents had to pay my legal fees. It was a small victory, but it felt good. Around that same time, Frank made me an offer. He was getting older, thinking about retirement, and he wanted to know if I would be interested in buying the diner. You've basically been running it for the last year anyway, he pointed out. Might as well make it official. I used my savings, got a small business loan, and bought Frank's diner. We renamed it Ellie's Place, and I poured everything I had into making it successful. Frank stayed on as a consultant and advisor, teaching me the business side of things I hadn't learned yet. Within a year, we had doubled our customer base. Within 2 years, I had paid off the loan. Lydia graduated at the top of her class and got into medical school. She wanted to be a trauma surgeon, she said, inspired by the doctors who had saved her life. She asked me to come to her graduation, and I did. Sitting in the audience with Frank and his wife, cheering louder than anyone when they called her name. Our parents were there too. I saw them across the auditorium, looking older and smaller than I remembered. My mother tried to approach me after the ceremony, but I turned away. I had nothing left to say to them. Lydia was polite but distant with them, taking a few photos for appearance's sake. But she left with me and Frank. Not with them. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? Lydia asked me later. At the celebration dinner. I considered the question carefully. I don't know, I said honestly. Maybe someday. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting them back into my life. It just means I'm not letting them take up space in my head anymore. She nodded slowly. I think I understand that. Years passed. I expanded the diner into a small chain. 3 locations across the state. Lydia finished her residency and started working at the same hospital where we had both nearly died as kids. She found purpose in saving lives, in being the kind of doctor who saw patients as people, not numbers on a chart. We built lives we were proud of. Lives that had nothing to do with our parents' expectations or limitations. We took care of each other the way family should. When Lydia had a bad day, I was there with comfort food and terrible movies. When I was struggling with the stress of running a business, she was there to remind me how far I had come. Our parents aged. They got sick. They got desperate. They reached out again and again, wanting reconciliation, wanting to be part of our successes now that we had them. We ignored most of their attempts. Once, my mother sent a long email about how sorry she was, how she had been a bad mother, how she wished she could go back and change things. I read it once, felt nothing, and deleted it. You can't change the past. You can only decide what you do with the future. I ran into my father at the grocery store when I was 32. He looked old, frail, nothing like the intimidating figure he had been when I was young. He saw me and froze, his hand gripping the shopping cart handle. Ellie, he said, and his voice cracked. Richard, I replied, deliberately using his first name, not calling him Dad. He flinched at that, like I had struck him. How have you been? Successful, I said simply. Happy. Building a life worth living. I heard about your restaurants, he said. and there was something in his voice that might have been pride if I cared enough to analyze it. Your mother and I, we're proud of what you've accomplished. I felt a laugh bubble up in my throat, bitter and sharp. Are you? That's interesting, considering you told me I wasn't college material, that I had no future worth investing in. His face crumpled. He suddenly looked every one of his 67 years. I was wrong. I was so wrong about everything. Yes, I agreed. You were... Can we talk? He asked, gesturing weakly toward the coffee shop attached to the grocery store. Please. Just for a few minutes. I should have said no. I should have walked away. But curiosity got the better of me. What could this man possibly have to say to me after all these years? We sat at a small table in the corner. He ordered coffee with shaking hands. I ordered nothing, making it clear I didn't intend to stay long. Your mother has Alzheimer's? He said without preamble. Early stages, but progressing. The doctors say she has maybe 5 years before she won't recognize anyone anymore. I waited for the sympathy to come. The automatic response of a daughter hearing that her mother is dying slowly. It didn't come. I felt nothing but a distant, clinical interest. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, because it was what you were supposed to say. She talks about you sometimes, he continued, his voice thick with emotion. In her clearer moments, she says she wishes she could go back, change things. She says she's sorry for what we did to you. It's too late for sorry, I said quietly. Sorry doesn't give me back my childhood. It doesn't erase the years I spent wondering why I wasn't good enough to love. You were good enough, he insisted, reaching across the table like he wanted to take my hand. I pulled mine back. You always were. We were the ones who weren't good enough. We were the ones who failed. I know, I said. I figured that out a long time ago. He sat back, looking defeated. What do you want from us? Ellie, what can we possibly do to make this right? Nothing, I said. There's nothing you can do. The time for making things right was 15 years ago. When I was lying in that hospital bed and you were deciding whether I was worth saving, or 10 years ago. When I was sleeping on the floor and you were taking Lydia to scholarship interviews, or 5 years ago. When you showed up at my work begging me to give her a kidney, but hadn't bothered to check on me in months. You had 1,000 chances to be decent parents, and you chose not to take any of them. So that's it, his voice rose, drawing looks from other customers. You're just going to cut us out forever, we're your parents. Ellie, we made mistakes, but we're still your parents. No, I said calmly. You're the people who gave birth to me. That's biology, not family. Family is Frank Miller teaching me how to run a business because he believed in me. Family is Lydia rebuilding our relationship from scratch because she actually wants me in her life. Family is the employees at my restaurants who show up for each other, who have each other's backs. You two stopped being my family the moment you decided my life was worth less than Lydia's. I stood up, shouldering my purse. I hope your remaining years are peaceful. Richard, I hope the Alzheimer's takes the memories of what you did before it takes everything else. It would be a kindness. I walked away from him then, leaving him sitting alone at that table. I didn't look back. I had spent too many years looking back, wondering what I could have done differently to make them love me. Now I knew the truth. There was nothing I could have done. Their failure to love me was about them, not about me. When I told Lydia about the encounter that evening, she was quiet for a long moment. Do you think I should go see Mom? She finally asked. Before she forgets who I am. That's up to you. I said, I can't tell you what to do with your relationship with them. That's your decision to make. Did you feel anything? She asked. When he told you about the Alzheimer's, I thought about it honestly. Relief. Maybe. That someday she'll forget what she did. That the guilt, if she ever felt any, will be erased. It seems like the easy way out for her. Lydia nodded slowly. I think I'm angrier than you are. Isn't that strange? You're the one they hurt the most, but I'm the one who can't let it go. You loved them without knowing what they were, I said gently. You lost something when you found out the truth. I never had that illusion to lose. I always knew. I'm going to see her. Lydia decided. Not for her sake. For mine. I need to say what I need to say while she can still understand it. Then I'll go with you, I offered, if you want company. She looked at me with gratitude shining in her eyes. You would do that? After everything. You're my sister, I said simply. And you've never given me a reason not to stand beside you. We went together the following weekend. Our parents lived in a small assisted living apartment now. Their savings depleted by medical bills and poor financial decisions. The woman who answered the door was a ghost of the mother I remembered. Thin, frail, her hair completely white, her eyes vacant and confused. Lydia, she said uncertainly, peering at us. Is that you? Yes, Mom, Lydia said gently. I brought someone with me. Our mother's eyes drifted to me, and for a moment there was no recognition at all. Then something flickered across her face, something that might have been memory or might have been fear. Ellie, she whispered. You came. I came for Lydia, I said, making it clear I wasn't there for her. We sat in their cramped living room. My father wasn't there. Lydia had found out he spent most of his days at the library or walking in the park, unable to watch his wife's mind deteriorate. Coward, I thought. Even now, he was running away from the consequences of his choices. Lydia talked to our mother for a while, asking about her health, her daily routine, the books she was reading. Our mother answered in fragments, losing the thread of conversation, circling back to topics she had already covered. I sat silently, observing, feeling like I was watching a stranger. Then our mother's eyes focused on me with sudden, startling clarity. I'm sorry, she said, and tears began to roll down her weathered cheeks. I'm so sorry for what we did to you. Are you sorry for what you did? I asked. Or are you sorry that I survived to remember it? She blinked, confused by the question. The moment of clarity was already fading, the fog rolling back in. I don't understand, she said, her voice plaintive, childlike. I know you don't, I said. You never did. Lydia reached over and squeezed my hand. We stayed for another hour, but it was clear our mother was fading in and out, not really present. When we left, Lydia was crying. Is it terrible that I felt nothing? I asked her as we drove away. That I watched her struggle to remember and just felt empty. No, Lydia said, wiping her eyes. I think you've earned the right to feel however you feel. You don't owe her your grief. Do you regret going? I asked. No, she said firmly. I needed to see it. I needed to know that she's really losing everything. The way she made you feel like you were nothing. It's not justice. Exactly. But it's something. We didn't visit again. Lydia went a few more times over the following months, driven by a sense of duty I no longer felt. I sent money for their care, because I could afford it, and because I refused to be the person who let someone suffer even if they deserved it. But I never went back. My mother died 3 years later. She had forgotten all of us by the end. Forgotten her own name. I'd forgotten the daughters. She had failed so spectacularly. My father called to tell me about the funeral. I didn't go. I sent flowers with a card that read simply, from Ellie. No condolences. No love. Just acknowledgement that she had existed and now didn't. Lydia went to the funeral and told me about it later. It had been small. Just a handful of people. My father had given a eulogy that painted our mother as a devoted parent who had sacrificed everything for her children. Lydia had stood up halfway through and walked out. She came to my house instead, and we drank wine and toasted to the future. Not the past. My father lasted another 2 years. Heart attack. Sudden and massive. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. Lydia called me from the hospital where they had taken his body. Do you want to see him? She asked, her voice steady but sad. No, I said. There's nothing there I need to see. Yeah, she agreed. Me neither. We arranged a simple cremation. No service. No gathering. We scattered his ashes in a public park because he had no favorite places we knew of. No meaningful locations that held memories worth honoring. He had spent his life accumulating nothing of value. Least of all love. After the ashes were scattered, Lydia and I sat on a bench overlooking the pond. Do you think they ever really understood what they did to you? She asked. No, I said. I don't think they were capable of it. Understanding would have required empathy, self-reflection, the ability to see beyond their own needs. They didn't have those things. Do you think we'll be okay? She asked quietly. After everything, do you think we can be normal people with normal lives? I looked at my sister. This woman, who had been the favorite child but had chosen to walk away from that favoritism once she understood the cost. She had built her own life. We become a surgeon who saved lives. Found love with a kind man who treated her like she mattered. She was happy. Or as happy as anyone could be with our kind of history. I think we're already okay. I said. We survived them. We built lives they couldn't touch. We found family in people who actually deserve that title. We're more than okay. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I love you, big sister. I love you too, I said, and meant it. We sat there as the sun set over the park. Two survivors of a family that should have protected us but chose not to. We had lost years to their cruelty. But we had gained something too. Strength, resilience, the absolute certainty that we would never treat another person the way we had been treated. My restaurants thrived. I opened 2 more locations and started a program to hire and train young people who needed a second chance. Kids like I had been, desperate and overlooked and hungry for someone to believe in them. I paid fair wages, offered benefits, created a workplace culture based on respect and support. I built the family I had never had, right there in those kitchens and dining rooms. Lydia pioneered a new surgical technique that saved countless lives. She won awards, gave lectures, became exactly the kind of successful person our parents had wanted her to be. But she did it on her own terms. She married her partner in a ceremony where I was the maid of honor. She had 2 children who called me Aunt Ellie and climbed into my lap for stories and cuddles. I never married. I never had children of my own. I had relationships. Some good, some bad, but I never felt the pull toward conventional family life. I had my restaurants, my employees, my sister's family, Frank and his wife who treated me like their daughter. I had built a life so full of love that I no longer felt the absence of the love I should have received as a child. On the 20th anniversary of the fire, Lydia and I went back to the lot where our old house had stood. Someone had built a new house there. A cheerful yellow Victorian with a wraparound porch and flowers in the yard. It looked nothing like the place where we had nearly died. Do you ever wonder what our lives would have been like if the fire hadn't happened? Lydia asked. Sometimes. I admitted. But I think the fire just accelerated what was already true. They had already chosen you over me. The fire just made it obvious. It was never really about me, Lydia said softly. It was about control. I was useful to them because they could shape me, mold me into what they wanted. You were dangerous because you were independent. Even as a kid, you thought for yourself. You questioned them. They couldn't control you. So they decided you weren't worth the effort. I hadn't thought about it that way before. But she was right. My crime hadn't been some inherent unworthiness. It had been my refusal to be the child they wanted instead of the child I was. You know what the funny thing is, I said. They spent all that time and energy making you their perfect daughter. And you still ended up walking away from them. All that investment, and they lost both of us anyway. Lydia laughed. Sharp and bitter. Good. They deserved to lose us. They deserved to die alone, wondering where they went wrong. We stood there for a few more minutes, looking at the house that had risen from the ashes of our old life. Then we turned and walked back to our cars, back to our real lives, the ones we had built from nothing. I'm 38 now. I own 6 restaurants. I mentor dozens of young people every year. I have a life filled with people who value me, who see me, who would never leave me to burn. I have made peace with my past. Not through forgiveness, but through the simple act of building something better. Lydia is 40. Chief of trauma surgery at the hospital that once held our broken bodies. She saves lives every day. Fights for her patients the way no one fought for us. She has a family, a career, a legacy that has nothing to do with the people who gave birth to us. We survived. More than that, we thrived. We took the worst thing that ever happened to us and transformed it into fuel for something better. We refused to let our parents' cruelty define us, diminish us, or destroy us. And that, in the end, is the best revenge of all. So I want to ask you something. If you've made it this far in my story, if you've listened to everything I went through, here's what I need to know. Was I wrong to walk away? Should I have forgiven them? Should I have given them a chance to make amends? Or did I do the right thing by cutting them out of my life and building something new without them? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me what you would have done. And if my story resonated with you, if you've ever felt disposable in your own family, hit that like button so I know I'm not alone. Subscribe for more stories about survival, resilience, and refusing to accept the limitations other people try to place on us. Because you are not disposable. You are not worthless. And you deserve better than people who treat you like you are. Your worth is not determined by the people who failed to see it. Remember that.